This is the biggest differentiator between those candidates who will pass their upcoming CFA exam and those who will fail it. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do it right. Had I not done this thing when I was a candidate, I don't think I would have passed the level 2 or level 3 exams. The good news for you is that this practice is typically handled during the last week leading up to your CFA exam. With the August CFA exams about a month away, you have plenty of time to make sure to do this and to pass your exam. Okay, I'm done beating around the bush here. The secret that many candidates fail to do while studying is to memorize formulas. You must make it a priority to memorize formulas in the final days leading up to any CFA exam. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how to most efficiently memorize all the formulas that you're going to need to know, with some tips from the mistakes that I made along the way. Now let me be clear, I am not saying that just memorizing formulas in the final week is enough to pass a CFA exam. It is definitely not. The most important factor to passing a CFA exam would be the total amount of hours spent studying. You just have to know the material. But memorizing formulas is the biggest differentiating factor because candidates who studied a lot but fail to memorize formulas in the final week often will come up short. However, if you studied well and you make sure to memorize all the formulas that you might need for your test, you will have a drastically higher probability of passing it than most candidates will. Really quickly here, I'm going to get into exactly how to find all the formulas that you'll need to memorize. But first, a shameless plug. If you want to see the exact formula sheets that I made and I studied from to pass each of my CFA exams, they are available on my Patreon page. Link is in the description. So let's cover this formula memorization process and I'll describe exactly why it is so important. And shout out to Mark Meldrum for making a video on this exact topic that he released about a month before I took my very first CFA exam. Had I not watched that video and followed all the tips that he presented, I don't think I would be a charter holder today. First, let's cover the logistics of memorizing these formulas. I was lucky enough to get 3 full days off of work in the 3 final days leading up to my exam. 2 of these 3 days I utilized to memorize formulas all day long, about 12 hours each of the days. So I think it's fair to assume you need about 24 hours total to do this effectively. Now you could very well split up these 24 hours amongst every day in a week, like over the course of 6 days. But the risk of this is that you could potentially get behind on some of those days leading up to the exam. And you don't want to push memorizing formulas off. You don't want to miss out on any of this because I promise you, knowing formulas is critical to passing any of the CFA exams and especially level 1. The methodology is to handwrite every single formula from your formula sheet 20 times. It's that simple, but it's very annoying to do. You're going to handwrite every single formula that you think you need to know to pass your test 20 times. And I sort of felt like the best way to do this was just in blocks of 10 formulas. So you'll write out 200 formulas and then you'll go back up to the start of that 10 formula list and you'll cover up all your writing so that you're just looking at the name of the formula, or if you have it on a note card, just look at the front side of the note card. And then you'll quiz yourself to see if you have actually memorized those 10 formulas that you just wrote 20 times each. Any of these 10 formulas that you're not able to recite in your head, write them out again 10 times each. And then after you've rewritten those formulas 10 times, cover the writings back up, just look at the name of the formula again, and recite those. You want to make sure that you can recite this block of 10 formulas in your head to yourself before you move on to the next 10. Then when you can, you handwrite the next 10. And this is going to be painstaking. I mean, literally, your hand is going to hurt very badly. If you schedule this out like I did, spend the last 1 to 2 hours of the day taking a break for your hand and going back through all the blocks of 10 formulas that you hand wrote. Quiz yourself again on all of these. But now, any formulas that you don't remember, I wouldn't say to just handwrite them out again, because you've already done this 30 times for some of these formulas. I would say to circle them and make a note on those that you forgot them. This is going to be important a little later on. And the next day, you're going to do this all over again, moving on through your formula sheets. I understand that this is going to be extremely boring, but you must do this to maximize your chances of passing. You see, one of the biggest reasons this is such a differentiator, and one of the reasons many candidates don't do this, is because they feel that they have learned and memorized all the formulas just because they've done plenty of practice questions over the prior few months. Now, if they've done enough practice questions and all the EOCs and all the blue boxes, they may have actually applied all of the formulas that they'll need to know to pass their test, but they have not memorized those formulas. Sure, 50% of them they might know pretty well. They might even know them by heart just from doing enough practice problems that involve those formulas, but you're just not going to know all the formulas cold that you'll need to know when you sit down to take the real thing. You must have them memorized cold, like I just mentioned, to be able to efficiently answer questions on the exam, especially in levels 2 and 3. You might run into some time constraints. You have to know these formulas by heart to get them written down on your answer sheet or on your notepad really quickly so that you can go ahead and just plug variables in from the question and spit out the answer you need. Now onto where you should get all of these formulas from that you need to write down on these formula sheets. What I did all the while I was studying, the whole 8 months or 8.5 months leading up to this formula memorization period, any formula I encountered, I wrote down. But then more importantly, any of these formulas that I had written down in my study notes that I actually had to use to answer any of the questions, and by questions I mean blue boxes, EOCs, practice questions from my test prep provider, or any questions on any mock exams, I would put 3 stars next to the name of that formula in my note sheet, showing me that, hey, this is a formula that had to be used to answer some CFA question. And I did this for all 3 levels. So in the last week before my exam, I was able to go through my whole notebook of study notes that I'd been taking for the last 9 months and pull out about 120 or 150, depending on which exam you look at, formulas that had 3 stars next to them, because then I knew those are formulas I needed to answer some questions throughout the curriculum. Another option is to use the formula sheets that Kaplan or Wiley publish, and I was studying with Wiley, so I got the Wiley formula sheets in my study package, and I did look at those during this process. In my opinion though, both Kaplan and Wiley put way too many formulas on their formula sheets. They were like 3 times as long as my formula sheets were, and they included a lot of information that just wasn't necessary to answer some of the questions on the exams. Again, I'm trying to do this as efficiently as possible. Plus, especially with Wiley, it showed how to derive some of the equations to get to the formulas you needed, and that was confusing for me to see them doing that work and then spitting out an end formula when really that end formula is like the starting point when answering an exam question. Now, if you want to save a lot of time here, you can check out my formula sheets that I mentioned earlier are available on my Patreon page. Again, they are exactly the formulas that I memorized going into each one of my 3 CFA exams, but keep in mind they're a bit outdated. I wrote those sheets in 2017, 2018, and 2019. Most of the formulas on there will still apply, but there could be some new formulas in the curriculum that you will need to memorize to effectively answer questions on your test that I didn't have to 3, 4, 5 years ago. Finally, the morning of your actual CFA exam, you are going to go back through and review each one of these formulas. That may sound like a really time-consuming thing, but trust me, it's not, because 95% of them, you're going to be able to recite them cold by now, and so you're just going to be reading through your formula list and you'll be able to tell yourself what the formula is. Give specific focus, though, to the ones that you had to circle at the end of the day when going back and reviewing all the blocks of 10 formulas that you had handwritten, because those are the ones that for some reason didn't stick in your brain. And during this last 1 to 2 hour period, any formulas that you aren't able to recite accurately, put a few circles around those, and then make sure at the end of this little mini review period, you go back through and quiz yourself once more on those formulas that you missed. I did this in the car ride to the exam center. Maybe you have to wake up a little earlier to do this at home. Whatever it works for you, if you do what I just described, that will result in you walking into the exam center, having accurately recited to yourself and on paper every single formula that you will need to pass that exam. And that is a great place to be coming from when you sit down to take the test. That is why this is the biggest differentiating factor and what I call the secret to passing all 3 CFA exams. Thank you very much for sticking around to the end of this video. I hope it was very helpful. Let me know in the comments down below if you follow this process, and then let me know in 6 weeks from now if you pass your exam. I would love to hear about anyone who takes advantage of these tips and utilizes them to give themselves a better chance of passing. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't done either of those things yet already, I very much appreciate it. And as always, have a good one.